What's up, everyone? Jonathan here with the Venue RX podcast. And today we're talking about a very important topic, turning data into dollars. And with me today, I have Christy Osborne. Christy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about data and dollars. Uno, dos, tres.
Well, and I think that a lot of times people don't understand how to correctly connect those, right? And so I'm really excited, here on the Venue RX, we're really passionate about helping wedding pros level up their businesses. And, the way that you do that obviously is just by learning. And you have an incredible company, Mountainside Media, correct?
Correct.
What do you do at Mountainside Media?
I do a lot of magic.
I love magic. That's good.
I do ads and analytics primarily. So oftentimes that starts with market research so that we understand what baseline is, what the market demands and things like that. I do a lot of paid advertising. People often come to me for one of two reasons. One, they don't have a great online presence and they believe that paid advertising can help them jumpstart that digital footprint. And spoiler, sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. Generally, I'll talk to folks about whether or not their ad's ready. As an aside, if you're not ads ready and you run ads, it can just make all of your problems worse. So try to make sure that I'm vetting clients and managing expectations in that situation. The second reason folks come to me is that they've done all of the things. They've had some early successes with organic social media or SEO or paid advertising or whatever they're doing. And then they hit this plateau and they have no idea why nothing's performing anymore. And oftentimes I'm doing analytics audits or content marketing audits or even Facebook ads audits to try to identify what happens, like why did the spigot turn off for them, and then how to fix and correct that.
Awesome. So is there a lot of crossover then with what you do and SEO, just from the kind of the ability of people to find you, especially from like an organic standpoint?
Yeah. So Sarah Dunn is actually a friend of mine. So we have some box conversations going on about this, and we've spoken together about, digital footprints and getting traffic and things like that. SEO is a part of analytics. So Sarah and I both do Google Analytics as a part of our job in creating client success. She is focused on one channel, and that is Google search. When I'm doing analytics audits, I am doing a more holistic approach, and I'm looking at cross-channel performance. So search, real weddings and PR, social media, organic, paid advertising, referral traffic, traffic from directory listings like The Knot and Wedding Wire. And I'm sort of looking at this larger marketing mix for opportunities and failure points. So she's looking at analytics generally with Search Console and the keywords and the queries that are coming in. And I'm looking a little bit more holistically about different channels that are driving traffic. And then for me, what gets more exciting when it comes to analytics, and I'm sure people are just like clicking off the YouTube at this point, but how well your website is performing to convert all of that traffic into inquiries, because you can get, and Sarah and I agree on this, you can get all of the traffic in the world, but if they're not primed and ready to do business with you, it's not going to do you any good.
Mm-hmm. All traffic is not good traffic. It sounds like there's
all traffic is not good traffic.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and Christy, I don't think people are turning off the YouTube. I hope they're not clicking away.
Don't click out.
Especially for venues. I mean, in the venue category, people are putting up so much money. They are maybe signing long-term leases. They are, there's huge down payments. There's a lot on the line. And so I think this is one of those kind of virtual construction pieces. Like it's great. You've put beautiful coats of paint, you've done these different things for your venue or for your business. Maybe you've invested, your time, your money to come up with a product or service that is awesome. But if you haven't done the work to understand, how you're performing in a digital sense, you're really going to be wasting some of that money, right? And maybe even attracting some of those views and things that you don't want. And you don't understand how to look at the metrics. I know I've been guilty of that in the past. So I'm excited to learn from you here today. When you start working with someone, do you see a massive difference? And someone specifically in the wedding and event space, do you see a massive difference in how you treat different vendor categories, whether they're a venue or a florist or a caterer?
100%. 100%. Venues, venues are like a unicorn for me in my work when it comes to the paid advertising side, because you're the first to book, right? Like nothing else gets booked before the venue, really. You have to understand like where you're going to have your event. You need to understand, you need to have certain things in place before you start booking even your planner sometimes, even your photographer, your florist. So the real opportunity for venues and media buyers like myself is that because you're the first to book, we can just like go out typically with a down fund, like a book now message, and try to get those inquiries immediately. Sometimes with other vendor types, there needs to be, especially videographers, there's a lot of education and warming up and things like that. But venues, we can go in, just book now, inquire now, and we can get a lot of traction and inquiries that way. The caveat and where I end up doing a lot of consulting on my strategy calls is to your point, to make sure that they're set up for ads, because the overhead is so great. Your mortgages are like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month. You have overhead like landscapers and in-house planners and staff and cleaners. And if you are doing food and beverage, there's a whole, bunch of things to consider with that. And so it's really, really important that a venue understands its cash flow throughout the year, right? Because weddings are really interesting businesses. It's sort of like travel and tourism in that you have peaks and valleys. So you have your event, your event months, you have your booking months, and then you have your quiet months, right? Where there's not a lot of money coming through the door. And so I just got on a strategy call with a venue owner. She wanted to lease she wanted to lease a place first to provide proof of concept, and then possibly buy a venue. Well, there's all sorts of things that she needed to understand that are completely outside of my wheelhouse, such as, how many square feet she needed, what the price per square foot that she could afford, given all of the other overhead, like staffing. And so what she thought was, in her head, she thought, well, I'm just going to build my reputation online and start marketing. And if I market, I'm going to get money in, and then that money will pay for the things. And I'm like, you really need to understand how much revenue you can generate per square foot and how much money you have to pay for per square foot. And if you don't have positive cash flow throughout the entire year, and you try to start, spending $500, $1,000, $1,500 on ads, and then you hire another consultant for $1,000 a month, and then you have your social media person that you're paying $600 a month. All of a sudden, you're paying $5,000 or $6,000 a month for marketing, and you're not even getting money through the door yet. And so I actually referred her to Michelle Loretta from B Sage Consulting, who actually does that kind of financial planning to make sure that they have positive cash flow before they come back to me, because they have to understand what their marketing budget is. They can't just think that they're going to pull the lever on the slot machine and get all this money. So I'm really careful, especially when it comes to vendors with really high overhead, to make sure that they are in a financial position to make investments in marketing. And then it's my job to make sure that they get that return on investment. But look, sometimes it can take a couple of months to get a return on investment. If you hire me and you're doing paid media, or you're doing audits, or it's Christy Fix My Marketing, sometimes it takes me a month just to do the market research and audit your stuff to figure out what is right and what is wrong. Mm-hmm. Then it's another, 2 to 4 weeks to create a content strategy or an ad strategy. And then it's another 2 to 3 weeks to actually test content, use data to turn it into dollars. But when you're testing content, you cannot expect that you're going to get a return. You can only expect that you're going to get enough data to make a good decision based on the numbers you're getting. And so if you are coming to somebody, if you're coming to any media buyer and you're like, yeah, I'm negative cash flow and my mortgage is $7,000 a month and I'm just going to put ads on my credit card. Any media buyer that says, yeah, that's a good idea, run. Because what they're doing is they're putting you at risk of losing it all. You've got to get your financial house in order before you start doing paid media and big marketing, because marketing will only make your problems worse. If you have cash flow problems and you invest money into marketing and you think that you're going to automatically make $1 million in a month, it's just going to make those cash flow problems worse. Because here's the trick, and I'll stop talking.
No, this is amazing. I'm so guilty of a couple of these things, by the way. We're going to get to that in a moment. So go ahead.
The deal is this. If I could put $100 into Facebook and Instagram ads in 1 month and make $1 million back, I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be like jet skiing Richard Branson, in his a neighboring island to his island, right? That's not how that works. And so if you're listening to like gurus that are like, this is the thing, and we can get you, 10x on your investment in 2 minutes, chances are that's not going to happen. If you're a planner and you just set up a Wix website and you have no overhead and you're doing everything yourself, great. Go play with marketing on the internet. When you have a $7,000, $10,000, $15,000 mortgage because you're running a venue, you need to get your financial ducks in order before you start doing any major marketing moves.
That's super, super important. I think you've brought up 2 separate tracks of topics, and I kind of want to pursue both of them, but let's start with number 1. I think you've kind of been warning us here about thinking naively about the power of the marketing dollar. And I know when I first started out, and even I think the temptation now is, with the 2 venues that we manage, the temptation now is to think of if I just pour some money into marketing, it's immediately going to be, a return. And that's not necessarily the case. There's a whole kind of ramp up process. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
There is for digital marketing. And this is the reason why when you set up your website and you do some SEO techniques, or you do some paid ads, or you have, somebody running your Instagram organic channel, when you're first starting out, most of the folks that are going to see those things don't know you. They're what's called cold audiences. They don't know you. You haven't built a trust and authority. And it takes a minute to get known in a busy, noisy space like the internet and social media among cold audiences. Oftentimes in any vendor segment, whether it's venues, planners, florists, or whatever, if somebody tells me I need money, I can't pay my mortgage. And this has literally happened. People are like, I can't pay my mortgage, but I'm gonna invest in myself by hiring you and putting all of this on my credit card. I'm like, not working with you. Just PS, if you're in that situation, I cannot work with you. But what I will tell you is start networking. And venues have this amazing opportunity to network in two ways, especially if you're a brand new venue or if you're a new owner to a venue and you are doing something different with the venue. One is styled shoots. Everybody loves, finding a beautiful location to do styled shoots. So you can network through, contacting a vendor team and saying, hey, I'd love to do this with you. And, we'd like to submit it to these blogs and publications and so on and so forth. But then the other one is like, look, we're in the event industry. Just throw a party, just throw a grand opening party and invite people in, and introduce them to the venue. You will go a lot farther, spending $5,000 on a small cocktail hour where you're doing like a grand opening for your venue than if you take that $5,000 and fritter it away on the internet, hiring, random consultants and social media managers and media buyers like myself to just hopefully fling money out into the internet and see it come back in. Why? Because the vendors get to experience firsthand what it's like to be in the venue. Every vendor type has different requirements. So the photographer is looking for different things like lighting and places for portraits. The entertainment folks are looking for different things like acoustics, electrical outlets, places to set up their like DJ booth or their band or things like that. The planners looking at like how the flow of folks and where the tables are going to be set up. So if you spend time with people and allow them into your place in order to evaluate your place, then they know what they're going to get. And then they can, then they can start referring people to you or mentioning you or, things like that. Now, I know I said that people book the venue first, and that is true. And also, your entire vendor team, if the venue that they preferred falls through and they need another venue if they do hire a photographer planner first, which sometimes happens, that photographer planner can refer you, and so on and so forth. So I know that we're supposed to be talking about like ads and analytics, but it's really important for me to make sure that vendors especially are set up for success when it comes to spending money on marketing. And when they come to me desperate, oftentimes I tell them that it's not the best use of their time or money to just jump into advertising immediately.
Totally. I think I really respect that a lot. And I respect your perspective on that, because I think a mark of a true professional is knowing who you're going to say yes to and who you're going to say no to. And you really have to protect, it's your responsibility to kind of protect the client, I think, from themselves sometimes. And
a lot of them come back. Like I've said to folks, like, you need to do this first, but keep in touch. And, I'll send them an email like 3 months, 6 months and, hey, how's it going? And some of them are like, that was great advice. Thank you. We're solid. We're going to come back and use you. And that was that.
Totally. But you have to know how to use the marketing budget, because if you don't, then you're not turning the data into dollars. You're just the data and the dollars are probably all disappearing because you don't have a strategy.
Right.
So let's kind of shift then. Let's talk about how someone, let's say that they're new, right? The venue's been open 6 months or a year. They've had some styled shoots. They've kind of made the local community there aware of their presence. So they've maybe done some correct things there, but they really haven't experimented at all with paid ads. Maybe they're organic. And you said you kind of look at a holistic sense. So maybe they're not showing up on Pinterest. They're not on Twitter. They've logged onto Clubhouse one time. Facebook is so-so. What do you do with a venue like that who comes to you and says, Christy, how much money should I even be thinking about spending? Like, where's a starting point for folks who are in that position?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the channel. But before we even select channels, I'm very fond of saying that whatever channel you choose, the channel itself is not marketing. Mm-hmm. The channel is a vehicle for the message. Marketing is all about getting the right message in front of the right people at the right time. It has zero things to do with which platform you pick. So if you start with the message and the folks that you want to get in front of, and you consider like when they are available to fully receive those messages, because there's a natural event planning journey. There's a natural wedding planning timeline. It starts with inspiration. Then they do some general research, like how much is a venue supposed to cost in my area? How much do I have to budget for food and beverage? When should I send up my save the dates? Like whatever. They have like general questions about wedding planning. And then there's a second research phase where they're actually vetting you, or a vendor segment. They're vetting you against your competition. Then they go into like the booking stage where they fill out the inquiry form, and then they have an experience with you, right? They receive your emails, information, they do a venue tour, they hop on a sales call, all the things, sign the contract. Then there's the event. And then finally there's sharing, which includes your reviews online, social media sharing, and things like that. So when you're thinking about your marketing mix, the channel becomes less important than the needs of your potential clients, given where they are in that wedding planning cycle, right? So that's just one. Like, don't even worry about Pinterest or Instagram or this or that or anything else. Just first of all, worry about that natural wedding planning cycle and what types of information do people need given where they are in that wedding planning journey, and how can you show up and deliver on those needs and help them solve problems.
Totally.
That's one.
For venues, do you kind of have some things that you see venues and maybe even other pros as well, but do consistently wrong?
Yes.
Can you walk me through some of those? Because I feel like in my mind right away, I'm going, okay, maybe I would write a blog about wedding dresses or rings or, but I don't know. I mean, is that, I'm thinking I'm probably falling into one of those categories where I'm going to be, making a mistake there. What things do you see pros doing maybe incorrectly?
Yeah. So you've hit the nail on the head. The first thing is that you need to blog like a wedding venue, not like a wedding blogger or Brides Magazine or Martha Stewart's weddings, right? So when you're thinking about inspiration, what types of inspiration are people looking at when they are searching for a venue? Not general inspiration, not your wedding gown or whatever, right? It's like specifically if they are going to choose a venue, what types of information do they need in the inspiration phase in order to be interested in you? In the research phase, what do they need to know about venues in general in order to prepare themselves for a successful booking journey with you, right?
So the mindset starts with preparation.
Yes.
Not with just weddings.
Just general wedding stuff.
Okay.
Now I worked with, I did a strategy session, and this isn't a venue, but the point is the same. They were a dress manufacturer, a boutique line, a fashion line of wedding gowns. And I looked at their blog, and it was all about like when to send your save the dates and how to address things and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, you can do these things, but you have to think about how these things ladder up to a sale in wedding gowns, right? So what we talked about for a strategy for the wedding gown folks is what kind of style, invitations would be great if you're interested in this wedding gown. This is your style. So this wedding gown is romantic. Here are some romantic invitations that match the gown. You can do the same thing with your venue. So if you have a beautiful upscale, historic, colonial venue in New England, and you want to talk about style and design and trends because you know that that's kind of trending for Google search or Pinterest, that's fine. but be very clear about how that information ladders up to actually booking the venue. And what that does is it sort of constrains what you can talk about, but it also, when you're talking about wedding gowns on Pinterest, if you put it within the context of that colonial New England venue, like here are some traditional wedding gowns that look beautiful in this traditional venue, then it makes sense to them why they would book you as a venue. Otherwise, they're going to come from Pinterest, they're going to read your blog, you're going to have like wedding dress trends for 2021, and they're going to leave. And they're never going to do business with you because they don't understand why you're talking about wedding gowns as a venue.
It seems super arbitrary.
So arbitrary.
Absolutely. Okay. I love this. There's an intentionality here that I think a lot of people maybe miss. I have a question for you though. Do you feel like, let's say I'm, Jonathan, venue owner, right? And I have got this beautiful piece of property and I'm thinking what my strategy is going to be like in the next 12 to 24 months, right? I'm thinking critically. I want to be an awesome venue owner. I want to make a lot of money. I want to, have incredible relationships with my couples. Would it be a good idea to create a funnel basically of how I want the life cycle? Because I feel like you've alluded to this in a couple different points, but in the whole digital marketing world, there's, funnels of how there's downloadable content and there's these different things that bring people into your ecosystem. As a venue, should we be thinking about it the same way?
Yes and no. Again, your responsibility is to give people information that helps them on their wedding planning journey, but also ladders up to actually booking your venue.
Okay.
So that is the criteria. So when you're out there on the internet and people are like, you need a lead magnet, you need a download, you need this, you need that. Well, first of all, oftentimes those are marketers talking to marketers, and marketing to marketers is completely different from marketers talking to venue folks or marketers talking to the wedding and event industry in particular. What I have found for venues is you likely don't need a download. And I'm finding actual downloads are working less well anymore. What works better are things like small snackable, like video content series. That works really well. But for a venue, they don't need a download. They don't need a educational video series. They need a venue tour. So any way you can digitize that and turn that into a lead magnet where you get some sort of piece of information, whether it's their email address or permission to message them on Messenger or whatever it is that you want to do. Fundamentally, they are most interested in a venue tour, and that is the single thing that will propel a booking decision. So again, your responsibility is to book your event space. You need to start with the thing that they need in order to make that booking decision. And for you, that's a venue tour. So doing a download may or may not be lucrative for you, because it may or may not address a need. Now, if you can't do a venue tour, that's fine. Oftentimes people will capture an email address with just pricing and collections PDF, right? So here are collections, here are prices, here are menus and drink options if you're doing food and beverage, or if you have complimentary ceremony, beverage service, or whatever, you can capture an email address like that. But I think that, to your point, really being intentional and really thinking about that experience that people are having as they're planning their event, and also not just what do they need in general, what do they need in each phase in order to make a booking decision with you? What information do they need in order to book you if they're just looking at inspiration? What information do they need in order to book you if they know nothing about how much venues or food and beverage cost? What information do they need to book you when they're comparing you side by side with your competition. And if you can figure out those three things for those three phases, you will blow your competition away because they're just showing engagement rings and talking about how much they're swooning over how beautiful this couple's engagement rings are. And it's like, what does that have to do with the wedding or the venue?
That is gold. That is amazing. It sounds like it comes down to empathy. Like what would I want if I'm approaching a venue? I love that you talked about the tours. I feel like we're gonna have a lot of people who are listening to this kind of just facepalm because it's like, that is the thing. It absolutely makes sense. That is the thing that someone would be looking at. You're totally distracting people from the actual purpose of them being on your site if you're trying to talk to them about wedding dresses or rings or whatever else. But when you're able to capture information from them, phone number, messenger, whatever, email address, then all of a sudden you've opened up the dialogue on a piece of information that they do need to make a purchase decision. I have a question about the email part though, and any of this information. Do you think it's less valuable to capture this information in our industry versus other industries? Because once they make a purchase decision and once they get married 9 or 12 months later, they're done. You can't market to them. Now, maybe you can market for a engagement or an anniversary party or something like that, but that's going to look fundamentally different versus someone who is going to maybe rebuy pens or something else. It's like continual purchasing. Do you feel like there's a difference?
There is a difference. I don't think that email marketing is dead. Make no mistake about that. I think, again, it depends on timing and their needs. I think it's more difficult in the wedding industry to capture emails at the inspiration phase. You really need to figure out what they need and how they're being challenged in terms of meeting those needs. So it can be quirky stuff in the venue space. So where I live in the mountains of California, we actually do not have a venue that can accommodate more than 150 people in this area. So, being able to think outside of the box, if you want to come to Mammoth Lakes and open up a venue space that can accommodate 300 people, there's a market there for you. But, for example, if somebody is right on the cusp of that 150, there is venue space, but it's going to be tight. And there's only 3 places for them to pick. And you're one of those places. That they are challenged by almost hitting capacity. You also know that they're probably challenged for other things, how do you bring in 150 people to purchase, 450 room nights in a rural area that only has 2 square miles and two fine dining restaurants, and that's it. So there's a lot of logistics that are involved in bringing large groups into a rural area. If you are a venue that can accommodate larger weddings in a rural area, and that there are logistical challenges, instead of just doing a random PDF download about random wedding stuff or random venue stuff, really hone in on the challenge, solving the challenges of your particular local environment, and leverage that in your marketing, your messaging, and whatever you offer for that lead magnet. I have a venue client in the South, and one of the things about Southern weddings, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, is the weather isn't always great. It can get super hot and sticky and humid in the summertime, and it rains a lot all the time in the South. That's why it's that green. And so with this particular venue, and I'd like to talk a little bit about market research. Totally. We went out and we did market research in the competitive set. So I'm like, who are your top competitors? And I looked at all of those competitors. And one of the big things missing in that market that this venue had was it has open air pavilions. So it feels like you're outside, and it's a permanent structure with a big, beautiful stone fireplace. So it feels like you're outside. And they also have beautiful gardens and garden spaces and big open decks. And there's all these places that you can have your ceremony and reception. But if you plan your reception outdoor in the garden and it looks like it's going to rain that day, that staff is so good at like flipping that entire reception space, getting it into the pavilion. You still feel like you're outside. You still have that natural outdoor wedding experience, but your guests are covered. And it's also a beautiful space. You're not just like jamming them into a plastic tent, right? So it feels better. So when we talk about things, and listen, I just posted to their Instagram channel and I showed this beautiful pair of like blush pink and rhinestone wedding shoes with the diamond engagement ring, all flat laid and styled by the photographer. And the image was of shoes. But when I spoke about that image, I talked about when you have a garden wedding outdoors, make sure that you and your wedding party have these heel protectors so you don't sink into the lawn. And the reason for this is when we did the market research, we realized that the market gap for this venue was we were going to be the outdoor experts. Everything that it takes to put on a successful outdoor wedding, including backup rain plans, moving people into the pavilion, making sure that heels don't sink. We do style guides for attire for Southern weddings, and we talk about outdoor weddings, and we talk about different temperatures for different seasons and stuff like that. So I'm doing all of the things, right? You look at that venue and you're like, well, they're talking about style and wedding style. Yes, I'm doing it within the context of outdoor weddings because that's the brand pillar. That is the brand platform we own in the market. Nobody else can own that concept except for us. So we hammer it every single time we can. You look at our Instagram, it looks like a lot of other people's Instagrams. But the way we talk about ourselves is always about outdoor expertise in planning a successful outdoor wedding in the South, no matter what the weather.
Got it. So it sounds like it's not necessarily just the topic, but it's the timing and the way that you're actually speaking about it. Because if you're just, if the blog or the post or whatever feels random, because it feels like if I look at that Instagram right now and I'm like, oh, look, they posted something about, attire, I'm going to do a style guide. Also, for me, it's going to seem really random, but yours is well thought through. And there's a element of being very purposeful, very intentional about saying, this is why we're sharing this bit of information. Yes. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Well,
and I think now we have to move to the $1 million question, this market research that you're talking about, because this is I'm so curious. So how do you go about, because, you said you discovered through market research, you discovered that, these different things were for that venue in the South. You also talked about how in your market there in Mammoth, there is a lack of venues that are able to accommodate 300 people or 200 people or whatever. How do you go about ascertaining that's even a need?
Reviews and online discussion groups.
Okay.
So it's drop dead simple. Like when I said magic, I was like, it's not like, it's so simple, right? There's nothing magical about doing this. So basically what I ask a client is, who are your top competitors? And when I say your top competitors, I don't mean who you're directly competing against or who you want to be like. I mean that when somebody searches for a venue in your local area, who else comes up? So if I go into like incognito mode and I Google, venues for 150 people in Mammoth Lakes, California, there's going to be 3 or 4 top people that come up. Right. When I go onto online reviews and I look at the Not in Wedding Wire reviews and I'm looking for people who had that size wedding, who do they mention also looking at? Or if I go into Facebook groups and if I'm in the city big enough, like New York City, Atlanta, Chicago, LA, what other types of venues are people recommending when somebody says, I want something like industrial and modern and outdoor in LA.
Christy, can I interrupt you really quick? Where do you start with this?
Right.
Because so let's say again, with these hypothetical scenarios, let's say that I am looking to build or purchase a venue. Let's say that I'm like, like I'm from Texas. I want to go to Texas and I want to have an incredible ranch wedding venue. And I'll live on part of it, do that whole crazy thing, right? Live on part of it and then have an event space on the back 3 acres or whatever. What questions do I start asking? Or what things do I start looking for? Is it capacity or is it my dream?
So I love it that you use Texas ranch wedding venue. That's a working ranch, but also has like 3, because I've actually worked with venues, literally worked with venues like that.
So cool.
So what you do is like you take your geographic area, and oftentimes, especially when you have rural areas like in Texas, you're going to have larger feeder markets like DFW or Houston that are like Austin that are sending traffic to those markets. So you have a Texas wedding venue, say DFW is your feeder market, right?
And how do you determine, you're saying a feeder market because there's a lot of people in the area and it's an area that people are frequently traveling to. How are you using that term feeder market?
Yeah. So like if you're at a location like Green Estates in Texas, like the population's 1,800 people or 5,000 people or whatever. So you're likely not necessarily going to be attracting a lot of local folks getting married, especially if you're a more upscale venue. Right?
Got it. Makes total sense.
So what's going to happen is your largest metropolitan area, there are going to be folks that want to get out of the city, make their wedding weekend or event into kind of a mini vacation, a getaway treat for their guests. And so they're going to be looking within sort of a radius for that type of venue, right? So let's say, whatever it is, like San Antonio. People, I think Green Estates, I think San Antonio feeds green. Is it Green Estates? It's green something, and it's spelled really wet. Anyway, what you want to do is you want to figure out what other Texas ranch wedding venues are near me that people from San Antonio would be considering when they're considering me. And you don't have to be like super, super accurate. Like even if you don't have a venue, like what other ranches are available? Because couples are going to find those venues and they're going to vet you against them. Mm. The second thing you do is you look at their reviews. And I like to organize this into a spreadsheet, and I like to sort them by the newest reviews, because some venues have a lot of staff turnover, and what was a problem 2 years ago has been resolved. So I like to look at the most recent reviews and go back. I like to take the entire review, copy and paste it into a spreadsheet, and read it and keyword code it according to my keywords, right? So when people are saying, we picked this venue and it was so beautiful and the staff was so friendly, and we were really impressed because we had these challenges planning our wedding and deciding on a timeline or picking a caterer, or whatever it is that they talk about in the reviews, and this venue helped me. What will happen is for each competitive set, you get 50 to 100 comments. You keyword code them, and you're going to find 2 things. You're going to find what's called market parity, which means every single venue in that market needs to have this in order to do business. Typically in the venue space, it's a beautiful venue, right? So if you don't have a beautiful venue, you're not even on the playing field. Sometimes, like for a Texas ranch wedding venue, it could be rustic details. It could be a separate place for the wedding party to get ready, which is, interestingly enough, a lot of ranch style venues, they have the beautiful wide open spaces. They have the beautiful outdoor ceremony spaces. They might have a tent for a rain plan, but they don't have enough outbuildings to actually help the wedding parties be able to get ready or to relax comfortably. Like there's no private spaces. So these are some of the things that you're looking for. So market parity is generally a beautiful wedding venue, right? Then what you want to do is you want to figure out, what does each competitor own in that space that you're never going to be able to compete with, right? So going back to my Southern wedding venue, their venue is new construction. It's modeled on a colonial look, but they are not an actual historic building. Okay. So they can't compete on the historic nature of some of their competitors. Their competitors also got high ranks for food and beverage, like really good food and beverage. My venue can't compete on that. So what we're looking for is like, what can other people say about themselves that we can't say about ourselves, that we're just going to let them do their thing? So that's that. And then what you're looking for is you're looking for the gap in the market that only you can say about your venue. So again, for my Southern venue, they are the outdoor experts. No other venue in that area, if you want to get married in that location, has the indoor-outdoor capabilities that my venue has. And so that's why we talk about outdoor rain and things like that all the time, because the mansion in downtown can't talk about that. They can never, ever, 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 ever compete with us on that because they don't have it. We can't compete with food and beverage, so we don't even talk about it. We can't even compete on customer service. We get dinged all the time for customer service. So we don't try to say that we have the best customer service. We focus on what we do best, and we dominate in the market. And what that does is when clients inquire with us, everybody's on the same page. Mm. They know that if they wanted food, they were going to go to the competitor. They know that if they wanted historic charm, they were going to go to the competitor. They know that the customer service may or may not be the best all the time, because that is publicly available in the reviews. So by the time they hit that inquiry form, they want the garden wedding with the pavilion backup secondary. And that makes sales almost automatic, right? Because you've already pre-sold the venue. Everybody's on the same page by the time they inquire.
You're not wasting time talking to super cold leads that are probably not going to, be interested, and you're going to spend time touring them and all of that. This is super, super powerful. So I'm hearing two things. One, that maybe venue owners should talk to you, Christy, before they even start building or looking at buying anything.
I make marketing less random for people. That's for sure.
That definitely.
Maybe that should be my tagline.
Well, and I do think a lot of people spend random marketing hours and dollars. I just really think that happens. I'm guilty of it myself. The second part that I'm hearing is that when, let's say that you're in an existing market, and you're identifying those gaps. Let's even say your local market there in Mammoth. If you have the capability to have a 300 or 500 person venue, own the space of the 500 person venue, and don't just say, hey, look, if you want to have 500 people, you can't go anywhere else. So focus here. You don't have to focus on anything else. Question. Do you feel like service, you mentioned customer service, but do you feel like service is an actual differentiator?
It depends on the market, right? So look, if you're looking at your competitors and you're doing the spreadsheet and you're capturing all the comments and you're keyword coding everything, and you're the only person that has the level of professionalism and customer service in your market, own that. But it's dependent on what's going on in your market, right? I mean, I can't say that everybody should have great customer service. Listen, I am the queen of polishing the turd in marketing using this system. I've had two venues, one with customer service problems. Three venues, one with customer service problems, two with being run down and dingy. Literally, people would review and say, this place hasn't been updated since the 90s, right? And my job, and I love this kind of challenge, right? My job is to say, fine, we don't get to play in the normal space of great customer service, beautiful. The venue wasn't even nice, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm looking for in those reviews and online, in customer comments, in discussion forums when the brand comes up, what are they good at? Well, for this particular venue that got really terrible reviews for being run down in Lake Tahoe, they were the cheapest place in Lake Tahoe to get married. And Lake Tahoe is a really, really expensive place to visit. It's expensive for guests. It's expensive for couples. It's hard to get to. Even if you fly into the Reno Tahoe International Airport, you're driving for an hour, sometimes in treacherous, icy roads. And so if you want to stay in Tahoe, safely on the cheap, this was the best option. And so we didn't even try, because what am I going to do? Say, well, before you market online, you're going to have to renovate your entire property. No. So what were they talking about that was a positive? And we just went full bore, cheapest rates all the time, cheapest rates. Here's our special. Here's our package. We're constantly discounting, constantly running ads for discounts. Had a similar venue in the Bahamas, run down, didn't even have air conditioning in the rooms, no refrigerator in the rooms, just run down. What did people enjoy the most about that particular venue? It was in an outer island and it was away from the tourists. Mm-hmm. So we didn't even talk about how run down the venue was, right? What we talked about was that authentic Bahamian experience. So even if you have a reputation problem, figure out what people like about you and double down on that, whatever it is. And you will be able to attract folks. And also, I'm going to channel Alan Berg here and say, if you're getting bad reviews, also fix it. If you have a customer service problem, the easiest way you can make more money is to fix it.
Well, and I had a question about that. So if I'm the venue owner who has a customer service problem and I'm like, okay, I know I need to fix that. I need to find a new venue manager. I need some new venue assistants or setup people or whatever. Or maybe I am run down. I'm that cheap Tahoe, the budget friendly. And you're like, I am sick and tired of being a budget friendly, the cheap Tahoe option. I want to now service a different type of clientele. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take out an SBA loan and I'm going to go and do blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to spend $300,000 or $400,000 really renovating stuff. Now I kind of have to redefine my market. Because
remember how I said that marketing can make your problems worse if you're not careful? That is a situation. So if you do want to solve a customer service problem and you do want to renovate, certain areas or whatever, do that. But maybe you want to pull back on how much money and time you're spending on your current marketing efforts, right? Because if your current marketing efforts demand that you are marketing in a certain way because you are run down, customer service is a little bit different, but you are run down and then you want to renovate and stuff like that, maybe you kind of pull back a little bit and have this liminal space where you start building interest and buzz about the new venue, right? So say instead of you're going to renovate, so you're not going to be the cheapest anymore. So you pull back on that messaging. And instead what you do is you start doing behind the scenes of your demo, right? And you're like, we're completely renovating. We're so excited. We're going to have a grand opening in 2022. Follow us to find out more. Sign up for an interest list to find out more. There was actually a beautiful venue, lovely, but it did need to be renovated in right at the base of Squaw called Plump Jack. And I recommended they did this. I don't think that they did it, but they had to close for 18 months to do all of their renovations. And so that was a great opportunity to really slowly start to reposition them, build buzz about the new look and feel, because it used to be rustic, but they were going for something different, and using that marketing spend, especially on the organic side, to build buzz, so that when you do reopen your doors and you have that grand opening, people are primed for your new brand position and your new message. If you're trying to do all the things at once, you're trying to like renovate and kind of cram people into the back room it's just going to be a mess. So know when you have to like fix your business, and know when you have to market your business, and don't think that marketing is always going to fix your business, because sometimes it can make a bad problem worse.
Totally. Christy, you're like totally brilliant at this. This is awesome. Really, really cool conversation. I'm so excited for people to hear. Do you think, so from a research perspective, do you think that anything is possible? Meaning, I want to go into the Chicago market. I want to find a historic venue downtown. I want to make it like historical feeling, but then also urban. And, and I'm like, I hire you. Let's say capital's not a problem, right? I have 2 years of operating capital. Do you feel like anything is possible? Or when you start doing some of that research, are there those cases that you're like, I don't care how much you try to differentiate, you will fail? Maybe not fail, but like.
Yes.
Okay.
Not everything is possible. I have 2 comments. One, I had a planner from Payson, Arizona come to me one time, and she said, I want to break into the luxury market. And I was like, Payson? And she was like, yeah. And I use Shane McMurray's The Wedding Report all the time. It's pretty inexpensive. It's like $200 or $300 a year for a subscription. And you can go in and run all these reports in your local area that basically tells you the top and bottom of the market for spend, your average spend in terms of, he has all sorts of different averages, but basically there was not a market for luxury weddings in Payson. She was either going to have to move to Phoenix or Tucson or someplace else that had luxury, partly because Payson doesn't have luxury accommodations. There's no luxury wedding market in Mammoth. So part of it is like, you really need to understand your local environment and whether or not there's a luxury market there. Just because you charge what you're worth doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it, right? Like you get to charge what you're worth and they get to decide whether they're going to pay it. That's called market equilibrium. If you're talking about someplace like Chicago, where it's like, yeah, historic venue, there's probably a market for it and stuff like that. You've got to get straight on your numbers. And anytime you're talking about property or space, it's always going to come down to how much money you can generate per square foot and how much money it's going to cost to run the venue per square foot. You can have capital for 2 years. And if you're spending more per square foot than you can bring in, you're still going to run out of money, and marketing may or may not save you if the market's not there, right? So what I try to get all of the financial ducks in a row first before I go into that, because if there is a market for historic wedding venues in Chicago, but you can't generate the enough money per square foot, you're going to go out of business. We have a saying here in Mammoth Lake. This is common in Mammoth Lakes because square foot prices are so high, and the amount of money that we can generate per square foot for retail or event space tends to be, the margins are really tight. We have a number of people have come into town that have failed. And the joke becomes, how do you make $1 million in Mammoth Lakes? You come in with 10 million, right? So even if you have the money, it doesn't mean you're going to keep the money if you can't make that square footage calculation pencil, no matter how much marketing you do. Because if they will not pay the rates that you need to pay in order to, meet your overhead, then it's not going to work for you. Also, for folks that are considering buying a venue right now, well, I don't know, commercial, that might be the right time. What you want to do is you want to look at your real estate rates. Right now, the consumer new home construction and resale market's hot. Like there's no inventory anywhere. But with commercial buildings, they've sat vacant for so long, you might be able to get deals on commercial properties and venues right now. So that's the other thing. Like if you can buy cheap now and you can get really low cost of square footage on your mortgage in 18 or 24 months, as we're recovering in the event industry, yeah, maybe you can, strike it rich on these venues. I don't know, but before you come to me for marketing help, you better get this all sorted out. I recommend Michelle Loretta. She's a great financial planner and business strategist. But if you don't have these numbers like solid in your head, a good cash flow plan, you're just gambling with your money when it comes to marketing.
Totally. Christy, I want to wrap up with one more question, but this has been so fun just talking about this because we're not guessing anymore, right? And someone who's coming to you and actually following your advice and thinking about this strategically can really plan on being successful. Not like, I hope this works. They can really anticipate this is what it'll look like. This is how we're going to meet the needs of our market. My last question is, do you feel that these rules can be broken? And I'll use an example. Somewhere like in, oh my goodness, what are the Magnolia folks? Where do they live? Not Plano, Texas, but
Katy, Texas. No, not Katy.
It's
Texas.
Another P one.
Waco.
Oh, I'm sorry, not P, W. Yeah, Waco. So when they came into that area, it wasn't, and I mean, if you still kind of go through, you see, it's a nice town, but then the area where the Magnolia stuff is definitely takes on a character all of its own. And it almost is like it's built around, the city is built around that street and kind of what they've done infrastructure wise. Yes. And it's almost like they've created a luxury experience in an area where I wouldn't say is a luxury market. So do you see these rules being broken? People who are typically your luxury clients who'd be going to like Under Canvas or Joshua Tree or like these things. Do you see these rules being broken?
Yeah. So I don't know all the details about Joanna and Chip Gaines, but I will say this. They started in real estate and renovation for a local market. So they started a business that was generating positive cash flow that would allow them to reinvest in other areas of the business. My guess would be that because they were in real estate, they were able to start to see trends. And this is just data. It's not breaking the rules. My guess is they were starting to see trends that included different folks moving into Waco, Texas, maybe some gentrification going on. And this has happened between 2000 and 2020 nationwide. As it became more expensive to live in some of the major cities, a lot of college educated kids that couldn't afford to live in Houston or DFW or Chicago, New York, San Francisco, LA, they started going home to these smaller regional cities and setting up shops and buying houses and starting families. So my guess would be that it wasn't that Joanna and Chip Gaines took this like big risk to like build this great empire in the middle of downtown Waco because they could just see the luxury happening. My guess is they were probably a little bit more prudent and started to see trends in the real estate industry that allowed them to make a really smart decision when it came to opening up new products and new services and new parts of their business in downtown Katy. But I don't know all the details.
Totally.
Or downtown Katy, downtown Waco.
Waco,
Katy
yeah.
On my mind. I know more about Texas than I need to at this point. As a Californian, I'm like, how do I know all of the Texas towns and cities? I've worked with so many Texans. It's not even funny.
That's so cool. Well, I think it's kind of exciting because I definitely, from everything that I've read, the research that I have done, it seems like, this is very much happening. People are moving out of the cities, like with remote work. You can be living, in Mammoth and maybe work a job that typically you'd have to be in Silicon Valley for. You can do these different things. There are shifts, big, major industry shifts happening that allow people to go to places that, typically maybe weren't a hotspot for tech or whatever else. And so this sounds like an incredible opportunity to really be focused on the numbers, focused on the research, and make calculated decisions based on that. But would you agree there are shifts happening right now that are kind of exciting?
Yeah. And I feel like there's like two things we kind of been dancing around. One is not in my wheelhouse, clearly. But, if you want to open a venue and you have a vision and you're thinking of a certain location, I would, like I've mentioned Michelle Loretta, but there's also other resources for you that from the feeder cities in particular. The SBA does business consulting. They have an arm called the SBDC, the small business whatever it is, SBDC. There's SCORE, which is a program run by the SBA where people who have experience running businesses or multi-ops or venues or whatever it is, they volunteer their time to coach people, small businesses for free. They can help you write your business plan, get your loan, do all the things. If you're looking to open up a venue, they can help you with market research. Most chambers of commerce or city governments will keep business and labor demographics. You can just contact them for reports. The wedding report is another good resource, but don't just dream it without validating it in the market. And then for venues who are running and they're looking to recover, the way that you use research and data is, again, you put it into that local context. Don't be afraid not to look at what your competitors are doing. Like, how did they build their website? I want to copy that. Don't do that. Look at their reviews, figure out what they do well, figure out where they get dinged. Look at your reviews, figure out where you're crushing it, figure out where you get dinged, and then leverage what you do really, really well that your competition can't touch. And having a beautiful venue is not enough. I'm sorry. Like, I've worked with so many venues where they're like, we have the most beautiful venue. I'm like, well, that's subjective.
Amazing.
Go with what the market is saying. Look at what the market is saying and then make your messaging conform to that.
I love that. Well, Christy, thank you for that, for really giving us so much tactical advice here. I feel like people, if they weren't listening with a pen and paper, they definitely should go back and listen with pen and paper. But thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people connect with you? If they are interested in hiring you, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is mountainsidemedia.com. Currently, I have a nice little we didn't go into Google Analytics, which is a little bit difficult sometimes to just talk about and not show, but I do have a download that is the 5 reports, out of the box reports that every single wedding professional should be monitoring in order to gauge the health of their marketing. Super simple, comes with links to videos, how-to videos to, set things up if you need to set things up. And then you can find me on any social media channel at MTN, that's the abbreviation for Mountain, Mountainside Media Co. And that's Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse. And if you want to see what I do like in my real life, you can find my personal channels at Osborne Loves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But that's personal stuff. That's not marketing stuff. That's like mountains and dogs and skiing.
All cool stuff that people love.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day.